Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Valerie Grust. I am an Olympic swimmer from Guatemala, the creator of this webinar series, and I will be your host for today. Welcome to this new edition of Underwater Chats by Panam Aquatics. It was created by and for athletes with the goal of creating a safe conversation space for crucial subjects of development and support that are not commonly discussed in the aquatic community. We have a great webinar prepared for you today, Enjoying the Aquatic Journey. We are going to talk about everything that the career of an athlete entails, overcoming obstacles along the way, and finding joy and motivation in everyday life. We have an amazing panel joining us today as we embark in this conversation. First, we have Ariel Quasi, who is a Paralympic swimmer from Argentina. He had 4 participations in the Paralympic Games and won 14 medals in Pan American Games. He has a degree in advertising, a master's degree in organizational communication, and was a university professor at the UADE Foundation. He's currently a swimming coach for the Argentine Paralympic Youth Technical and Paralympic swimming team leader, as well as author and director of the Deport IC sports program, a multidisciplinary program for athletes with disabilities. Then we have Montserrat Ortuño, who is a Mexican pool and open water swimmer. In the same edition of the Central American and Caribbean Games, she was a gold medalist in open water and 4th place in the 800 meters freestyle. In addition, she obtained the B cut for the Olympic Games and participated in 2 Pan American Games and 3 World Championships, 1 youth and 2 open. She has a bachelor's degree in industrial design from El Tecnológico de Monterrey and currently works as a supervisor at a residential security systems company. And last, but definitely not least, we have Maria Jose Sanchez, who is a Mexican diver. At her young age, she has had a great career, achieving 3 gold and 1 silver medal in 4 Grand Prix editions, 3 gold medals in the Junior Pan American Games, and a bronze medal in World Championships. Before we get started, let me say briefly how the webinar will unfold. First, each panelist will tell us a bit about, their experiences. We will open up the floor to have a little chat with them about, the topic of how they have enjoyed this aquatic journey in, their long or short careers. And then we will open up our Q&A. So please be sure to input your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen at any point during the webinar. So with that, let's get started.
And this question is for each of you. Whoever wants to begin first, feel free to do so. We want to know every water sport is exciting, impactful for athletes, spectators, and audiences. So what is it that most excites you about your sport? What are you so passionate about that drives you to train at an intense level every day for hours? And well, I'll start. I think that for me, what has driven me most to train every day when I wake up is how much I love my sport. As you say, I think all aquatic sports are exciting, although they're very different to diving from swimming or artistic swimming. These are very pretty sports, which are exciting, and it's artistic. Swimming is like dancing in the water, and swimming is like athletics, but it excites me more to see swimming. I feel that it's more effort, let's say. I think it's very difficult. I find swimming very difficult, so I respect swimmers a lot. Divers is a high-risk sport, and it's also a lot of presence in the sport. So what motivates me the most is that I like it to be able also to motivate other athletes and people. I think that's what motivates me the most, what drives me the most. And as you say, each discipline is so different. You have to find what you like about your sports in your individual experience. Ariel, you tell us in relation to what Maria Jose says, that there's a difference between the different disciplines in aquatic sports. In my particular case, that for many years, I was a Paralympic swimmer. For me, it was very exciting to have a discipline where regardless of the results or the performance that my competitors could have. It was a question of always trying to go beyond my own limits. This is a sport for which time allowed me to do that as it is timed. And it was exciting because it was not only work that ended in crowning at the competition, but every one of the trainings, there was also a question of trying to achieve daily assessments. And this allowed me to have very precise parameters. There are disciplines that don't allow you this. They're team disciplines or team sports where the game is maybe more random. It's not constantly assessed as in swimming, as Maria Jose was saying, as when she drew a parallel with athletics. You can assess yourself every single day. And for me, this was very exciting because it was a constant daily test for me, a very concrete parameters of the situation that I was in each training, each competition. Of course, totally agree. It's so different because we here at Aquatics, there's 5 aquatic disciplines. It's so interesting to hear this, all of the very different parameters and how we can get things for our daily life that tell me I'm going to improve. I'm going to improve, for example, the risk, difficulty levels of my dives and like that. And Monse, what do you think? I think I'll add something to what Ariel said. I believe that these are sports that are very complete sports. At least swimming is not just swimming. You have to go to the gym. In my case, also, I ran some days. There are people who do functional training or yoga too. So it's not just swimming or just the aquatic sports, but everything that is a complement with supplementary activities. And this makes up a whole set and complex. It's very interesting. And also the fact that when it's aquatic sports, the noise goes away. You would jump into the pool and it was you against you because you couldn't hear anything. Maybe people were screaming on the stand all around you, but what you hear are the bubbles in the water and what's in your head. And that is very interesting to our sports too. At least I think swimming is an individual sport, but you train as a team. So that is also nice to have the same training with other people, but at the time of competitions or improvements, these are individual. That's what I like the most. Yes, also the friendships that you start creating on the way. And we know each other for more than 10 years, I think, at this point, and it's very nice. Also, among these countries, to have these friendships and everything you can add together. I also wanted to ask you if you can share with us what was your biggest obstacle in your career and how did you overcome it? Who wants to start? Onse? There's a point, you reach a point when you have the same routine, and this can be maybe not boring, but it takes you a more struggle to get up and to go train. So we have to understand that there's not always that motivation. Most times you can find that motivation, but when you understand that it's more a discipline, a commitment with your sport, you stop doubting and you do things and you just do things. So you stick to the work plan, and this allows the results to come eventually. It's understanding that part, that in the end, you will have the fruits of your work. Yes. And seeing what you just mentioned about trusting that the results will get here. In your experience, how was that? Individually with your trainers and coaches, how could you visualize that trust that I'm working and the results will come. We had a work plan, work schedule. We checked at the beginning of the season and we'd say these macros are 1 year, 6 months, depending on the competition. We would check, the loads, workloads. It would be maybe gym or these pool sessions. And obviously, before we got to a good event, there's always competitions for the experience, intermediate competitions. And you can see there everything that you have improved, or if you get there and are quite tired or you want to try out a strategy, you can do it here at these practice competitions and therefore get to the main competition in your best form. There are times when that strategy does not work, but it's always important once that event is over to get some retrospection, see what you can change, what did not work, and try again. To know there's always an alternative and you can try again and improve. Yes, of course. Very important, this process. Ariel or Maria Jose, can you share with us what was the greatest obstacle in my particular case? Maybe I swim because of what we experienced in Argentina, the problems we've had. In some periods, we have very few competitions or very few international participations. We don't have a lot of tryout competitions with other athletes. Those were the moments when maybe there was the greatest uncertainty among us, most doubts, and we needed work there, a lot of work on the psychological support and the working team in order to be able to go over and sustain ourselves in these moments, these plans. Aquatic sports have a particular feature that between two competitions, there can be a lot of training time. And if you don't have these situations for these trial competitions with other swimmers, then it's quite heavy. And what Monse was saying, these macro sites they seem eternal. And those are the times when you're just beginning in your sports career. You ask yourselves, are we prepared to sustain this? And you start understanding that this is part of the process. It becomes a bit more normal. But these are moments when, due to different situations, traveling, or economic, financial situations, opportunities, the participation, it becomes more complex to participate. And then you can enter a circuit where it's more common or regular. But to reach that point, these are difficulties that you must overcome totally. And that's part of the process, right? And we'll be speaking about this a bit more. This is so important. Any obstacle that you find, as Monse said, to have a plan B, an alternative. It's not the end of the world if you had a bad competition. Maybe it just wasn't the moment. I think that many young athletes don't understand. It's hard to understand it. I would say it too. Why I train so much? What else can I do? And to have this alternative is very important. And also the positive mindset. This must not be the time, but it will come, and not, this is where I'm going to leave it all. Thank you for sharing. And now your case, Maria Jose. In my case, specifically, the greatest obstacle I've had, and I'm still struggling against it, is the body change. I started when I was 6 years old. I was world champion at 14, just turned 14. So I was practically just a little girl. The pandemics came and my body started to change during the pandemic. When I went back to training, I had lost technique, I had lost strength, my body had changed. And for diving, Any change between, let's say, childhood to puberty or to becoming an adult is very difficult. Your body, you gain weight and you become maybe sturdier. You might jump higher, but you fall faster or you jump less. So for diving, this does imply a lot, this change in your body. And I struggled against this a lot last year in the pandemics, a bit during this year. And as Monse said, also the routine. I can't really have a routine. I have to have new challenges every day or I'll get bored. So I think that these are the obstacles that I've had to deal with the most these years. But in the end, motivation is not always there, but there are times when it helps, when discipline is what makes you go ahead. And I believe this is what's important, to stand up and know that you're doing what you like to do, what you enjoy. And in the end, you really have to put everything into it, know that that's why you work, and there will be a reward. Thank you for sharing this. I think it's so important. And so many people go through this. Me too. My career finished at 17. So I think that many people today don't understand the impact of getting to a very high level when you are young, and then how to deal with those changes in your body. So I think it's very important, as you mentioned, that you mentioned this because it's not discussed a lot. You don't hear people speaking about this. How have you managed this? What do you do if you feel a certain way? There are other things that you can do to measure how you feel, what your body, how your body has changed, how to adapt. Can you share a bit what steps you took in these tests, in these years? It's been 2 years since you've been working daily with this. Can you tell us a bit more what your process has been? Yes, of course. The thing is, at the beginning, it was very difficult. As I said, my body really changed in the pandemics. I gained weight. I had to lose that weight because for diving, it's aesthetics, an aesthetic question issue. And if you weigh less, the faster you fall, and it's easier to dive. People who can adapt, their body adapts, and everybody has a different weight, different type of body, different body type. But I train with Chinese who are always like, thin as sticks. And though I don't have the same physiognomy as a Chinese girl, my trainers do demand a lot with respect to weight because for them, this means a better result. So I have had to deal with this and struggle with this. I have a lot of help from my physical prepares doctors and nutritionists, all this multidisciplinary team, which I think is very important. And you don't really consider this about athletes. We feel that many times the people think we get to where we are very easily. But no, we have aid and assistance from all our multidisciplinary team, trainers, nutritionists, doctors, physical therapists. Even our parents sometimes are very good support. And this is something that I really had to go for support. Psychologists are also very important because at the end of the day, you train your body every day, physical aspects every day, but the mind is also very important, even more important, because physical is something you learn, but the brain is very difficult to train. I really had to work on this. And it was that this daily work, the support from my multidisciplinary team, and to not give up, to know what was going to happen, that this was going to pass, that it was a stage that I had to go through. Thank you for sharing. I think that you touched upon many topics that are so important. Another topic which I don't think is being discussed much, and we talked about it in our mental health webinar, it's about the aesthetics, what is expected in the sports, and not to fall into bad habits of maybe eating disorders. As you mentioned, it's so important to find support and people who can support you and look for resources of people who can guide you in your nutrition and your training and ensure that everything that is being done in a healthy way that your body can tolerate in a good way. So thank you for sharing this too. I very much agree with the psychologist topic. I have always been a great believer in that all of us need support, and looking for help does not mean that you are weak. Something we also spoke about in the webinar. So thank you for mentioning. And as you have all mentioned, now aquatic sports are very demanding. Many times they're very tiring and lead us to forget to enjoy and live every moment of the journey to the fullest. So I wanted to ask you, in your experience, how did you find that enjoyment on a day-to-day basis? In my case, when I was very young, I was in the aquatic environment. I was born with a disability, and that's why I started in Paralympic swimming. Since I was very young, I felt very comfortable. And as I grew, I just grew in the aquatic medium. So the truth is that routine of training, I never experienced this as an extremely hard process. I was able to very easily become accustomed to it. And at some time, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed that routine and the absence that I felt when we were in those periods that are very short, but the rest periods that we do need. So the truth is that that routine, sometimes when you become aware of the strange life of a high performance athlete in aquatic activities, especially because we're in a different means. We have many friends who are athletes in different disciplines, but they're always on land. We are in a different environment, as Monse was saying. We kind of isolate ourselves. My specialization is free, where our breaststroke, where our head was in and out of water all the time, in and out, and you're connecting, disconnecting, connecting, disconnecting. So always like in a parallel reality in this discipline. Also, what Monse was saying, we train as a team, but we don't really speak a lot. We don't have the chance to really be talking in a situation when we're sharing too much during the training. All of this, I still enjoyed it. So in my case, it was a very natural way that it happened. Since I was 3, I was in the water and I was competing since I was very, very young. But I really enjoyed the fact that I could be in this aquatic environment, which offered me something that when I'm outside, it doesn't offer me a sensation of a lot of freedom with which I don't have with the disability that I have. So it came very naturally to me. And the margin, of course, this is a routine that at times can be overwhelming, but it's a condition of high performance sports. And this is what Maria Jose was saying, of this need for a work team, for a support team. And a great part of all of this is what we experienced in this recent part of the pandemics, all of these different situations in which the psychological situation, our moods were essential in the work and sustaining this athletic career. Thank you for sharing this. It's so important. And as you said, in Paralympic sports, I think we have not given this visibility that it requires and merits. Could you tell us a bit more about the experience in working with a disability in this sport? Who are your support team, trainers? What is the process that you have to go through in the sport, as you mentioned? That was mute. In my case, Paralympic sports has the feature that there are processes which are quite accelerated. In my case, it was very natural. My particular case was a process very similar to conventional sports. Since I was very little, I started in the pool. It's very common now, I think, but I am older than all of you, and it wasn't in the moment when I developed as an athlete, it was not that common to be so young. Now we found a person with certain conditions who could be tied to this activity, and then we introduced this person to a sports of average performance, which in conventional sports is not common. I think that what I do consider in this experience that I was able to have in these years is that it is very important all the work that you do at an early age in people with disabilities, whatever the sport. I think that I'm very more authorized to speak about aquatic sports. Everything that has to do with the early stimulation will give a lot of tools to the person and will give him or her the opportunity to be able to decide with a lot more tools. And then from them, all the working team that you can get to know with what has to do with conventional sports, you can transfer that directly to Paralympic sports. There are not going to be huge differences, but everything that has to do with early stimulation will have a much greater impact than in any other athlete who does not have a disability, as yes, they will be able to work different questions, which over time would be atypical. Um, can you tell us now, and your perspective as a coach, how you visualize with the kids you work with this experience, giving them this environment where they can develop completely, and how is the day to day in order to develop of sports and develop themselves? How have you seen this now from another lens? Now that I have a different perspective, as I was saying, today it's a lot more natural. I see it in the new kids. I remember when I started at the beginning, I was the only swimmer with a disability on a team with conventional swimmers. They the rest did not have any disability. Today, it's normal to see an entire team of swimmers with disabilities. I think that it's a totally different perspective of having or not having a disability. I know that they see this now as much more naturally. They have a lot of information on the movements which they can do to participate. I think that today, beyond, I think there's still a lot of path in inclusion, integration, which is being discussed. And sometimes concepts here are confused, but I do believe that a lot of progress has been made. And I think that we are having steps forward. I don't know if at the speed that I would like, but I do see and try to transmit to them that mainly they have to enjoy what they're doing, because I have the responsibility now of working with youth swimmers. They're at a very important time of decision. Some of them are starting their university careers, starting to get involved with their adult life a bit more, and as adults a bit more. And what I try to tell them is that in a society in which still, due to obvious questions, we are a minority and we are a group in society that is very carefully looked at, but we're trying to be incorporated. So enjoy what you do. You have the privilege of being able to have the opportunity to be in the sport. And I think that they have to develop themselves from this, regardless of the results, whether they're good or bad. They really have to take advantage of the opportunities they have. Thank you for sharing. And as I mentioned in your biography, you're doing very good work within sports. So, as an aquatic community, it's so important for all of us to join together and to give back to the sport, which has given us so much. So, it's great to see you now as a trainer. And Monse or Maria Jose, would you like to tell us a bit more about how you find that joy daily? I wanted to add a bit what Ariel said with respect to university degrees. I think that what happened with me is since I was very young, I was able to train with a team. I was in a sports club, but then you start growing up and that big team becomes smaller and smaller every year. People change sports, people go live somewhere else, people start, it's difficult when they start university or studies and they just don't exercise anymore. So your circle becomes a lot smaller as you grow. And there's a time when, for example, when I was studying my degree, I also started having classes not only in the morning, but midday, in the afternoon. Though I still had my team, I had to train on different schedules. So I started to train by myself, and that's very heavy. It's very different to be doing series with a person right next to you or in front of you than having to do something by yourself. I think that with people, you can measure yourself, you can measure the steps you're taking, what you're doing well, etc. And I think that you really have to concentrate a lot and try to get through the trainings because there's no one that you can evaluate yourself against. So this was a bit difficult to adapt to and to try to enjoy. But in the end, there was no option. I couldn't, of course, change my classes. So I had to adapt. I wouldn't say if I can't change my classes, I have to adapt my training to the hours I have free. And I think that it's a bit about attitude, about trying to adapt to the things you cannot change. Yes. And we spoke about this when we were competing together. But yes, it's very difficult. I also went through something very similar, not due to study, but there was no one in my team really. All of them were little. I was the only older one. So finding that motivation, what moves you every day? What are your goals? What are you working on? What drives you? Because whatever the circumstance, as you say, it could be studies or the team circumstances or others, but how do you get motivated? Not so much motivation as Maria Jose said. Sometimes there's no motivation. Sometimes we have to recognize this. It's very true. You don't always have the motivation. So, what are your goals? Because that will move you every day. If you say, I'm tired, I have a lot to study, and now I have all this training, but I have competition. I'd like to just sit in my chair, do nothing. What moves you? What are you fighting for in that day to day? Monse, in your case, as you experienced this, in addition to adapting your training, what was your internal dialogue when you went to training and you knew that you had to be by yourself? What did you have to do mentally to prepare during the training, after the training? I think that you have to be very aware and convinced of what you want to achieve. If you already knew that in a year you'd have Pan American Games, you wanted to classify or you were already classified and wanted to have a certain mark, then you had to convince yourself that that was the goal and that no matter anything else, you had to reach it. So I think that it's just not going around it that much and just work on it. do what you have to do, jump in the water and say, I'm here. These are 2-3 hour trainings. And then later I'll go on with my day, my routine, my study. But right now, these 3 hours, I have to focus on this. And there were times when the training, maybe you're more tired, maybe you're more distracted, and the series don't come out as you would want them to. But that's one day, and the next day you start again and you try again. Yes, I think that this is what many young athletes, it's difficult for them. They have this frustration after the training where you say, I didn't do what I had to do. So now everything is down the drain. No, as you say, one day does not define the next day. You can erase everything and start again. That's very important. I think even when you're competing in competitions, maybe you have a fall in your training and it wasn't on the day when you wanted it to be. Sometimes I had 800, 1,500, 400, and the combined events, there were several days. And maybe on the first day, it was terrible. And you said, well, whatever, I already competed, that's behind me now, and turn it over because there are many people that it's very difficult to turn the page and they say, I did very badly. Tomorrow it's going to be the same. We have to turn the page, continue resting, eating well. And the next day is like another blank page, another opportunity, and you can have a very good result. Has nothing to do with the day before you. Yes, very important. Not saying what happened yesterday defines today, but just say go around and you have a new opportunity. And you had open waters and pool events. So can you tell us a bit? Because sometimes it was one or the other before. What was this process? Pool maybe went over. You couldn't just hang on to what happened in pool to then go into your open water events. In open water, it was 10 kilometers. Usually it was pool first and then open waters. So generally, in Central American Games, for example, it was 2 years, 2 days between one competition and the next competition. But this is a very long distance event. That's why there is not so much decrease or decline. I always had a very high training volume. And once going over the first, then I had to maintain. I wouldn't go, the decline or decrease was not complete, or I could, it was a semi decrease, but there was a time when we went to experience competitions in China, 2 weekends, one after the other, 10 kilometers, then another 10 kilometers. That was the only time when I said, I'm not going to be able to do this. 10 kilometers, you go out, you can't even move. When you get out of the water, all of your muscles are just so tired, everything hurts the next day. You're very, very tired for being 2 hours out in the sea. But you have 5 days or less for recovery. So you have to get the massage, stretching, continue swimming. The food, nutrition is key. Also, sometimes we compete when we're hurting, but I think that your head has to really be influential there. And sometimes you're accustomed, you have to get accustomed to competing tired. That's why we have those training competitions and it has to be done. Yes, it's very important. There are athletes now who feel very tired and the brain is like, no, why do I feel tired? I shouldn't be tired. You have to learn to recognize those patterns. Obviously, everyone's different, but don't get scared. This won't define whether you'll have a good or bad result. Your body responds in different ways. And also in that case, that time especially, all of us who were going to compete were in the same situation. We competed both weekends, and I said, if I'm this way, the rest are too. Why can they compete and not me? So you're not an exception. Everyone's in the same boat. Maria Jose, what can you tell us? How do you find the joy every day? There are many ways. listening to Ariel and Monserrat, I see how different sports are. Monse speaks of that she has many different tests, different types of competitions. In diving, also, you can have, I've had 8 different types of dives in 4 days of competition. But every diver that I know, me and maybe another 3, are the only ones who do the all around, which are normally in youth competitions, 1 meter, 3 meters, 10 meters, synchronized, 3 or 10, synchronized, combined, synchronized. So there are many different events, especially when there is are for the selective competitions. You can enter all of them if you want, but it's a bit difficult. Sometimes you compete 10 meters, you go and you go down to another meter, or maybe you're on 1 meter, then you have to go up to the 10, synchronized. Everything comes together, but this is what really excites me, to be able to compete in all tests, in all competitions. Monse also said she has to train by herself. It is very difficult. If swimming is difficult, I think all other disciplines here are very tedious. It's the same because they're very tedious. If when you're with people, if you're scared, then you talk with your colleague or you tell someone to help you, to talk to you or give you some advice. But when you are by yourself, the coach has all the attention on me. If I was alone, I had to coach when I was very, very young, and now I have to go by myself to certain competitions. But your head is what needs to be strong. And also, the joy is to know that you're doing what you like to do, what you enjoy, and that you do this for you. You don't do it for anyone else. You don't do it for your coaches, your parents. You do it for you because you like it. It's something that makes you very happy. I'm very happy to be in the pools, and I was very little. I was a water baby from Cancun. When they took me, I never didn't want to leave the pool or the beach. They took me to swimming classes, and I'd like to stay in the pool. I've always been a water girl. My element is water. So being in the pool motivates me. I love it. I'm very happy inside the pool. I was never accustomed to rest. The only rest we had was the 25th in the afternoon of December, 31st of December, and the 1st of January. But the 2nd, we had to once again be training on the 2nd of January. During the pandemics, it was an entire year of doing nothing. Obviously, I exercised at home, but it's not the same. I'm not in water. I'm not diving. I love the platform. It's my best friend. And many people would ask me, isn't it scary? Don't you look down and feel something? And I said, no, you don't even have time to look down. You just dive, you concentrate because you have to. But when I dive, this is what fills me with life. It illuminates and lights up my entire day. So it's enjoying what you do above everything else, but it has responsibilities that come along with it. On my elementary school, I finished elementary school, but I had a lot of absences. And then middle school, I had to take tutoring classes. I'm the youngest. I think I'm right now in second grade of high school, 10th grade would be. I have to really get organized. I train 3 times a day. At 5 a.m., I wake up, and at 9, I have breakfast. Then I go back to the pool. And in the afternoon at 4:30, we're either in the weight gym or on the pool. So my days are very short to be at school. And on the weekends, I have to do all of my homework that I'm behind in. So it's a lot of discipline, a lot of responsibilities. And as you grow, there are more. I don't know what the university will be like, but I know I'm going to have to be even more organized. But in the end, I'm happy and I love what I do. That's great to hear. makes me very happy. And you're going to do fine in university. Don't worry. But yes, it's very important, as you say, even though you're very young, you're in school yet, in the university also, you have to be very well organized. People see this as a sacrifice, but as you said, this is what you like. It's your passion, it's your goals. So I'm very happy that you've mentioned this for everyone who is listening to us. I'm sure they're very young. Many people, it's possible for many people say it as this is not impossible. Others say that it's impossible to be a good athlete and a good student. It's a lie. You can do both. You have to just organize and then you can have both. You're a good example of the fact that it can be done. So thank you so much for sharing. The last question is, many athletes wonder what they should do when they reach the wall of improvement. As athletes, I happened to me, many of us, I'm sure, we got to a point where we have not been able to improve our score or our team at a time in a competition for a long time. We have not, we have this frustration, these questions, these doubts of maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. Is this really worth it? And I try and do not improve. So what have you done to go over this wall of improvement? How were you able to get through this mental adversity, which leads a lot of athletes to become frustrated with the results? I think that I am at that point now where sometimes you don't see improvement or better results. Maybe no, when I was smaller, I saw better results. But I think that in diving, I had more difficulty than most of the other competitors. And my physical trainer, he has told me, analyze what it is you did when you were little. And I say it was more difficult for me than for many. I am very good. I was very good. I did dive very well, but my degree of difficulty was a lot higher. I analyze this now and I see I am more constant in competitions, but this is not the level anymore. My competitors have the same dives as I have, the same degree of difficulty. They have no failure. So level goes up, not only mine, but theirs too. And this is also something we have to consider. Not only us, but also parents. I think that for those who are in the sport, inside all of this, it's easier to see this. Maybe for parents, I think my parents, it took a very long time to see this because when I was little, everyone said, Majo, 7 medals in the National Olympics. 2021, Majo only won 3 gold medals, but it's not the same category, not the same competitors, not the same level. This is something that has to be considered. These are not the youth games anymore. And I'm 1 year from away from being first level. I think the level goes up, not only the others. Ours too. There are dives that when I was little, it was really scary for me. Right now, when I look at those dives, I say, why was I scared of those dives? This is something you must really consider and analyze the things that you didn't do before. Continue doing what you know you did well and brought results. Continue doing that. And what you know that you are lacking with, that you're not doing with, then don't do it. Or do it double. I think those are the most important things. Yes. And what you mentioned, I heard 2 things that I want to touch upon, which are very important. One is what people think. One is she won 7 goals, but now only 3. I think that this is something that has happened to all of us, this public opinion. It's hard to leave it to one side and for this not to affect us internally of what others are thinking. Do not have that pressure of saying, what will they think? It's very important for all people to be aware that that type of comment does not help the athlete at all. It's important to mention because sometimes you have your own value in the result. You put your own value in the result. And this is just a result. It's not what defines you. It's important to mention this. And with the improvement, it was to me very funny that you mentioned what works and what does not work. And what is not working, you have to, I think it's this extra thing that you always have to give. And not everyone is willing to give this extra effort. And that's the difference at the end. It's so important to say, well, if I can't reach it, I have to fight, fight, fight until I reach it. So I'm glad that you mentioned this. Ariel, Monse, any comments or not? I'm going to be very brief, but in 20 years in my career, I have tried to transfer this to my own swimmers now. The evolution curve is not always upwards. There are plateaus, and that's normal. And so a very big part of the athlete's life is these plateaus in the middle of peaks of reaching your objectives. But these plateaus are necessary. The training, preparation, and career of athletes, I do an analogy like a runway when you have to go down the runway fast in order to be able to fly. And we have to do this in order to be able to improve. Sometimes also you're very close to your ceiling and you can't be improving all of the time. Also understand the moments of each person's sports career. And I always say the same thing. You have to have a balance between effort, and which is very fundamental to have healthy sports career. Monse? I believe that I didn't have a very long plateau. I think that there was a very slow but constant improvement. There were events when maybe things didn't go well, but then in the next event, I improved in one race or another one. But an important thing of what Maria Jose is saying is that social pressure, generally by the media, which can be very strong, and it could create that you stop enjoying these events. The events like Panamericanos and Central Americas and World Championship is the highest that I went, where we have the athletes' villages. There are many amenities to enjoy and live with others. I almost didn't enjoy this because I was so focused on, how everything had to turn out perfect, everything had to turn out very well. I had to rest, I had to, well, sometimes you focus so much because you have a fear that things won't come out right. And you stop enjoying so many other things. In the end, you lose this focus that you're doing this for you, not for others. And generally in the Pan American villages, you have rooms with all of these games and machines so that you can be there with other countries enjoying time. And I put all of this to the side because I had to focus. As I see this many years later from outside, I think that this pressure that you put on yourself is too strong. And when you're there in that moment, you do not figure that out. You see it until much later. It's important for athletes to identify this and stop themselves, reflect internally. I think that maybe writing helps a lot. You can write it, all of these thoughts of stress, all of this pressure, you can reduce it and then itemize what it is that you are feeling and then do one step ahead to continue enjoying, or you will then be locked into this stress that doesn't let you enjoy. So your suggestion is, of course, see what works for you, take out this internal pressure. How do you manage that pressure? With me enjoying the same, I was in one of these events and there was pressure of you have to do this, you have to do that. And sometimes I didn't go to the opening because I had to rest my legs, and then the competition was later, and I should have enjoyed it. This is what I see many years behind. These are experiences that are once in a lifetime and they never come back. So you must have this awareness of this balance. You should have all of these protocols of resting, but give yourself moments to enjoy, to be present in the moment. And because in the end, all you have left is the sports. I've been retired about 3, 4 years. I don't remember the times I did my marks. I remember my friends. I remember my experiences with Monse when we were together one day, all of the teams, all of the friendships. I think this is so important to have this in your mind, this balance for everything. And so thank you. This really has gone by so quickly. Thank you for sharing with us the experiences. We have a few questions before we finish for our audience. If you have any questions for our panel members, please put it in our question and answer. And if you can answer this, how much is for you obtaining medals and acknowledgments, the drive behind you to do this? Personally, I struggle with this idea. I think it can be dangerous to focus on results because these are not always we don't always get the results we want. Well, for me, it is dangerous to think only about results and medals because of course they are important. You're going to feel very good when you win a gold or silver to be on the podium and hear your anthem in international competitions. It's very nice, but I think it is dangerous to think of only of the results. In the end, the result of a competition does not define you. What you do defines you. How much you work, how much you fight for a result is what defines you. There are good days and bad days when it will not happen, and days when it will happen. So I think it's to set yourself goals in dives. We do our scores. For women, 5 dives. For men, 6 dives. We don't look so much, or we don't count medals or first place, second place. More than anything, we like the scores. If in the last competition it was 300 points, this time, this new one, maybe 321 points. And you see the results you had on other competitions and you say 300 points will be a second first place, but more than anything it's your score and being able to improve your own score. Ariel or Monse? Yes, basically I think that's what's part of the comprehensive preparation for an athlete. It's beyond medals or the awards. You have to have something, or it becomes dangerous, or it makes your career maybe unfeasible because of these external pressures. I think that if it's part of the athlete's preparation, not only training and athletic performance, but also a more global analysis. Thank you. The next question is, how do you go over the stress of knowing that there are risks like diving from 10 meters or open water swimming? In my case, speaking of open waters, the truth is that the sea, I'm a little bit afraid of the sea, but I think that you have to focus on the competition. I'm not going to lie to you, but prior to the competition, when you go out to sea and get to know the sea while you'll be swimming and the currents, that stressed me out. But when I was in the competition, you don't think about that. You focus more on how you feel physically, the circuit, look at the buoys. You have to locate the circuit within the sea, breathing, supplies, and how you feel, your muscles feel. So I think the fact that fear to the sea. In my case, what's down there goes, disappears. You don't have time to think of that fear because you're focused on everything else around the competition. I think it's the focus you might give it to take that thinking in a different way, have a different thought. Yes, as Monse says, in that moment, you don't have time to think of the fear that many people who ask me, what do you think when you dive? What do you think before you dive? You can't really think. It's a high risk sport, yes. I would be a lot more scared of swimming in open waters. I love the sea, but I'm also very scared of it. Diving is a high risk sport. You can hit yourself on the head, on the trampoline, the platform, or if you're going up and you could even kill yourself by hitting yourself on the head or be unconscious. I've seen this. I have seen it. It's never happened to me. It is very risky. When they bring you out of the water, it's a dead weight. You're unconscious, so it's very difficult to bring you out. But at that time, you don't think about it. You're so focused on doing things well so that nothing goes wrong that you don't even think about it. You don't say these are 3 seconds or 2 seconds when you fall. And there's no time to think about anything else. You're so concentrated on doing things well. And also, you're happy to come out and you feel that applause. So you don't put so much attention on the fear. It's like second or third priority and has much less importance. The last question is for all of you. What has been your experience or your preferred, most enjoyed moment in your sports career? My preferred moment in my sports career was my first Paralympic Games. I was very young. I think that was what opened my eyes to high performance of the place I wanted to be in. And then I was able to be in that place for a very long time. So this marked me as an athlete. I think that for me, every competition, I have loved it. But I think my favorite competition was the Gwangju World Championship. It was my first one. I was 14. I traveled one day after my birthday. This was 3rd of July, and I flew on the 4th of July, competed on the 13th of July, and was there 20 days. It wasn't just the results, what makes me love that competition, makes it my favorite competition, but also everything that I experienced. You don't remember the scores, the result, maybe the result, but you remember everything else that you lived, the inauguration, when I went to play in the games room, that I went to the store to buy things, everything I talked about, people I met, Olympic divers, I took photographs with them. Paula Espinosa, I was with her a lot, Romel Pacheco, all those experiences are the ones that have made those competitions my moment, my favorite competition. For me, was Central American Games 214 in Veracruz, here in Mexico. And the pool was a pool that in every December national championship we competed there. If you ask any Mexican who swims, what is their favorite competition? I think it's that one. We love that pool. The games were there. So they were home. They were in our country. My parents were there. My brother was there. And the language is the same. You feel safe. And also, speaking about open waters, that's when I won the gold medal. And that circuit is the times when I've felt the best in open waters. The entire circuit, there was no point where I was totally exhausted. I felt very strong. I enjoyed it a lot. I think you swam there too, right? Yes, I also swam both things. And I really enjoyed it, the being on the podium and people from your country to be applauding and acknowledging you and then wanting to speak to you. It's very nice. It's unique. I think that was the event I most enjoyed. Well, thank you so much for our great panelists, Ariel, Maria Jose Montserrat. This conversation was wonderful. Thank you so much to all of you for being with us today. And we thank our audience who was with us today. Please contact us at any point on the Facebook or Instagram pages. There were many questions we were not able to answer, but if you want them answered by our panelists, send us a message. We'll give your questions to them. We also invite you to join our next web, which will be Safe Sports in Aquatic Sports, and be attentive to more information on our social networks. I hope you have a great weekend. And thanks so much to all of you. Goodbye.